What's going on, everybody? The host with the most, Logan Chasney here with Justin Peck from Alma College. How you doing today, Justin?
Doing well, Logan. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. It's been a while since we've actually been on the air. It's a couple months now. Me with my new job. You winding down a football season there over at Alma College. It's kind of hard to get together nowadays, especially with COVID and everything.
Yeah, COVID and the football season coming to a close. That 2 month break, it was actually really good because there was no way that our schedules would sync up in a way that we could meet. When I had some free time, you were at work, and then when you had the availability or downtime, I had practice and games and everything like that to get to. So that was a good, sad, sad break, but it was good that we could be able to just take a quick break and get some more viewers on our end and bring them back what they came for.
Well, exactly. Speaking of football season ending up for you, how did Alma do? How did the Scots do?
Ended 5-5. Ended on a strong note, even though it was a couple losses to end the season. But our guys fought till the very end. They did not ease up whatsoever. We're really proud of our guys for how they presented themselves and ended the season just fighting for each other on the field.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, I know that team puts their heart, sweat, blood, tears into every game, every practice, and I've been to one game so far, and I need to make more games. And I know I enjoyed that game. Um, but with that being said, there's been a lot going on in the sports world, especially of late of the past, I don't know, 24, 48 hours. Lots gone on.
24, 48 hours. My ESPN has been blowing up. I'm sure everybody's phone if their notifications are turned on because I finally had to just put mine to silent because it was just going off every 10, 20, 30 minutes or so with just breaking news of this coach is now out here, transfer portal entered, this high talented quarterback, recruits have been decommitting and like it's insane.
Yeah, it's phenomenal on what one game can do to the culture of the sport. But before we go to that, we always do one thing in the show, and that's our week to week, or as we like to call it, our daily lives. It's been a while since we've talked. You gave me a call today, said, "Hey, I'm available. Are you available?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, I'm available. What's up?" So, what have you been up to lately, other than football? How's life going on down in Alma?
It good. Basically just finished up everything. I had to inventory, clean up, do quick final counts, and get everything in packages and shipped off for recon. As I'm sure most of you don't realize, at the end of a football season, helmets and shoulder pads need to get sent into a distributor to get reconditioned. They strip the helmet of all paints and stickers and decals and everything like that, and make sure there's no chips or cracks or breaks in the helmet for player safety. And they take it apart, clean it, sanitize it, they buffer it, they do all types of stuff with it that I really can't get into detail other than that. And then they paint it back to the school colors that we are, and they ship it back to us. And then they ship off the stickers, and we put those on later on in the year.
Nice.
So those are all helmets and shoulder pads are all in packages and boxes and in a box truck waiting to head out to the distributor that we send them to.
Nice. So, from my understanding, we've talked briefly on and off through the month that we weren't able to broadcast. And correct me if I'm wrong. You didn't just work at with Alma Football College this season. You were able to go over to Central Michigan University and work alongside of their athletic department and work with their equipment manager. How was that?
Yeah, I have a contact up at CMU. I know their equipment guy. I've actually learned a lot from him, and he graciously opened his doors for me to come and observe what a game day would be like at his level. So I got to shadow him around for a little bit and see how everything goes, and that was really fun. Experiencing college football at a higher level and how much more work it is trying to put together a basic game day rather than it is for me. But it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed myself. It shadowing him and learning from a lot of the student managers that I was there to just observe and see how things are ran.
Now, with that being said, from my understanding, you also made a good friend over there that knows one of your players, and you've kind of talked with him, and he was interested of getting on the show one of these times, if not more than one of these times. It sucked that he couldn't make it today, but it is what it is. From my understanding, he does some tutoring. That definitely comes first. He is a student athlete over at CMU, and schooling definitely comes first before this. So, totally understand that. It would have been nice to have him on tonight, but hey, school comes first. That's a lot of money that they put into it. That's a lot of debt that they go into, and that's if they don't have a athletic scholarship coming from the school for them to cover their tuition, or even if it's a partial, even a partial student loan is can be up there in price. So it's definitely nice to see student athletes actually take their schooling just as important as them going to practice or showing up to a game early. Or well, to me, early is on time. So hopefully one of these times we'll have him on.
Yeah, it was kind of ironic. A lot of the guys were going down to the game, and they saw that I was going to the game and being behind the scenes, and they were telling me about a few players that they knew. So I went and got to see their ex teammates a little bit, and they're good friends with. And I did end up meeting a couple different players that I am acquainted with now, and I told them about this, and yeah, absolutely, they'd love to be on, but as you said, and we understand completely as well as they do. School comes first, and they put in just as much work as they do into their academics as they do athletics, if not even more, because it's the eligibility rules are a lot more strict in collegiate athletics than they are when you're even playing high school sports, and that's something that they need to take seriously, which is something they really do, and I've seen it done. Because if you go below a certain point in one single class, or uh, even just two classes, you're out for until you get something back up. And it's once you go down, it's hard to get back up because they just professors keep moving on to the next different thing.
Well,
You got to
exactly.
keep up, or you're behind forever.
Well, yeah, I've experienced that firsthand when I went to North Northwest Michigan College up in Traverse City. I played a little soccer there, and yeah, your grades mean a lot to those coaches, especially if you're a starter, because if you don't have the grades, you're not on the field, you're not at practice, and it's hard for them to keep you on the roster or even keep you as a starter if you don't have those grades up there. So yeah, I definitely can vouch for that. It is hard to be a student athlete these days in college because there's so much pressure put on not just you, but on the team itself to make sure everybody shows up to class, gets those grades amongst showing up to practice and showing up to the games on time or showing up for the bus to leave for the game or whatever. It's a tough world out there when you're a collegiate athlete at a especially a high end school like CMU or Alma College. It's definitely a rural world out there. You're like they say in football, you're fighting in the trenches. Well, when you're an athlete, you're fighting in the trenches when it comes to your grades and your schooling too. So,
Yeah, exactly. You're fighting both battles in the trenches.
like, you pretty much don't have a social life at that point. You go to class, you get out of class, you go to your next class, you get out of class. Now you go to practice, you get out of practice, you go back to class. It's tough. So I definitely tip my hats off to them because it's very hard nose out there when you're a student athlete. So, but other than that, what's going on with your life?
Not a whole lot. Just transitioning from football to basketball. Getting ready to do some high school basketball. Officiating and doing the official scores. Being in the scores table, scores book, score clock. I'm a whatever's needed based on where my assigner sends me as well. So I'll be traveling the central Michigan area a little bit, going from high school, doing helping out a little bit of high school basketball.
Nice. Well, as a lot of people don't know, is in this month's time, we actually were able to get together at one point, see actually each other physically, not over a phone, text, or Snapchat. I ended up going down to just 15 minutes west of Lansing and picking myself up a truck. And then I headed your way. I was like, fuck it. We're going to go see Justin before I head home. And we ended up going to a bar downtown Alma. And I swear to God, when I walked in there, I thought I walked into a bar that was located in Miami, Florida.
Yeah, the owner of that bar, huge Miami fan. He, if I remember right, he was born and raised in that area and been a Dolphin fan all his life. But he's a sports fan like everybody else, like you and I. A huge sports fan. So he collects memorabilia, and anything and everything he can get his hands on, he'll buy it and he puts it in his bar.
Oh,
That's what makes him the sports bar that's got all like it's a smaller version of Buffalo Wild Wings type where he's got TVs at every corner and every inch of his place, but it's the small town food that brings you in.
well, yeah, the food there was amazing. It just threw me for a loop to see 11 Miami football helmets hanging on his wall.
He definitely has his connections, as do a lot of other sports people. Like you have some of your connections in your sports world from you, your wife, and some of your family, and then I have some of mine from my career standpoint. So, everybody's got their own weird, not weird, but own little connections that they just keep to themselves and show off to their friends and family and visitors. And like, yeah, I know this person over here, and him and I are really good, and just trade off back and forth. It's really cool.
Yeah, yep. Speaking of weird connections, I just found out today. Well, not today. A few days ago. My wife's cousin, I think it is. He's a big off-road racer. He's just now getting ready to build a Pro 4 off-road truck for Amsoil Off-Road Series, and come to find out, and I didn't know this, he's really good friends with Discovery TV's Gold Rush, Rick Ness. And this upcoming season, Rick Ness has his own company called Rally, and he is going to be sponsoring my wife's cousin's Pro 4 truck for this upcoming season.
That's incredible. Good for him.
So there's even connections like that you come across and you don't even know about it until they rather announce it, or like Rick Ness announces it, or somebody announces it, that you go, wait, time out. I know that guy. I watched that guy on TV. The guy he's sponsoring is family to me. How the hell am I just now hearing about this? Just like my son, like a lot of people know, he drag races a junior dragster, and we just got recently a roofing company from Escanaba, Michigan. They are coming on board with us, Beauchamp Roofing, from right around Iron Mountain area to be exact. He's going to be his main sponsor this upcoming season, so that's awesome for him too.
That's huge.
So there's stuff in the works. I'm hoping, depending on how work goes, I want to get him over to one of the IHRA tracks here in Michigan and get him his IHRA license and see what he can do with that. That's going to be a handle in itself, to where it's going to take a lot of time, sweat, tears, and blood to go into that, but I'm willing to do it. It sounds like he's willing to do it, so there could be a lot to come. It could come down to, if he performs the way he should perform, that he could make it to the team finals here in Michigan for Mid-Michigan, and if he performs there and wins the team finals, he has a chance to go to the World Championships in Kentucky. So we're definitely gearing up for a very jam-packed, very little sleep race season among my work schedule.
Sounds like you will experience a different side of being a collegiate athlete, but getting the same amount of sleep and doing the same amount of work.
Yeah, pretty much. Being the founder and owner of Pachejny Motorsports, you don't have a dull moment, and you're definitely once the season gets going, it's like, all right, what do I need to do next? There's no downtime. There's roughly 4 to 5 months out of the year that I'm ready to pull my hair out every day because of how busy I'll be with making sure everything's ready for next weekend, making sure he's ready for next weekend. Where are we going next weekend? What is it going to cost us to get there? What do we need for food? Entry fees, all that. It's time consuming, and it's going to take a pocketbook that I definitely can't wait to spend a little money on this season. Like I said, I'm excited for it. He's excited for it, I believe, and it's going to be a wild ride, and I'm very thrilled to be part of this wild ride for this upcoming season.
That's great. I and as someone who's been around your motorsports and your racing and your son's racing, I couldn't be happier, and I can't wait to continue to watch you guys grow.
So, with that being said, there's a lot of talk in college football, and we might as well get to the main part of the show. I'm going to start it off with congratulations to U of M taking down the big bad wolf of Ohio State this past weekend. Headed to the Big Ten championship for the first time under Jim Harbaugh. I think with that win, Jim Harbaugh is off the hot seat for now. He's been on it for quite a few seasons now because it's like, when are you going to be able to take them down? When are you going to beat Michigan State? When are we going to make the Big Ten championship? So I think with this win and him getting to the Big Ten championship, it's just going to be another day, just like it was for getting ready for Michigan State. I will say I do hope that he only gave the team Sunday off, because if they want to go into the Big Ten championship and win it, I think they need to hit the grind, and that should have started today. They should be showing up to practice early, taking extra reps. They should change that drill that is called beat Ohio State to beat Iowa now, because that's their next opponent, and they need to literally put into the work. This is the go time, the grind time. They need to double their efforts more than ever now.
Yeah, absolutely. This is when you take that extra rep. Oh, I'm tired. No, give me one more rep. Give me everything you have. Do not quit. Give me your last ounce of energy. You give everything you got, because you are going to face a tough Iowa team. Iowa may not have as good as record as a lot of the teams in the Big Ten East, and then Wisconsin. And they might only have 3 losses at the most, if maybe only 2 at the most. I don't remember.
I believe they're 10-2.
10-2. Okay. You still can't overlook them. You can't overlook them, just like you can't overlook Michigan State. You can't overlook Minnesota. You can't overlook, hell, even Maryland now. Those teams are going to come ready to fight. And if you're not ready to fight from the opening kickoff, you're going to fall behind and you can't catch up. This is going to be one of those games where have to set the tone early. The offensive line did a great job against Ohio. You give those guys credit up front. All 5 of those guys, and then the rotating guys that came in when the other ones needed a break because they were on the field for so long. You do not win that game without those fellas up front blocking for you. And if you watch the game tapes of that game and compare them to the tapes of the Ohio State-Oregon game, it is the same thing. The men up front do the work and make it easier for your quarterback to sit in the pocket and look for a throwing lane, to look for your wide receivers that can get open for you, or when you run the ball, get that C gap open, get that B gap open. Like, you're getting those big guys up front a lot of work, and you're giving them a lot of credit.
Well, exactly. And I mean, if Wisconsin would have won their game last weekend, we'd probably be talking about a Michigan-Wisconsin game, which probably would have a different tone because Michigan actually plays Wisconsin in their normal schedule. That's every year, the three teams on Michigan's schedule that you know are going to be there is Michigan State, Wisconsin, Ohio State. They play them every year. Every other year they play Iowa. This year they didn't. So they're going into the Big Ten championship game against an opponent that the only thing they have on them is their game tapes. That's all they have to study on them. They haven't been out on the field with them to actually play the full 4 quarters of football and know, okay, this is how they are, this is how they react. They won't get that because they didn't play them in the regular season. So it's definitely, they got to treat it like an Ohio State team because all you have on them is the game hit films that are sent to you so you can study.
Yep, and you better believe that on top of waking up for that 6 a.m. lift and then going to that 8 a.m. class, every free moment that those players have is on their phone or on their computer watching film because they need to know how to handle different situations, different play calls, different audibles, different personnel changes. What do we do when this guy's in at this position? What do we do if he audibles to this position? Like, personnel is huge in college football, and so is the formations. And that's one thing that the defensive coordinator is going to look huge on when Michigan's on defense and Iowa has the football.
Well, exactly. And I think the other thing that's really going to play a big factor in this game Saturday is the simple fact that they're at Lucas Oil Stadium. They're not in a college stadium. They're not outside. And they don't have to deal with snow, rain, or anything like that. They're going to be in an indoor stadium with turf on it. So that's going to play a big factor in this game is both teams playing on outdoor field, and now they're going to be playing on turf. So there's the equalizer right there is the simple fact that they're going to be on and in an environment that they're not quite used to.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And this is going to be a game where the temperature feels like you're playing in middle of September, early August, but yet it's not going to the environment around them is going to be different as well because again, you're inside an indoor stadium. There's very few college football teams from D3 to D1 even play their home games in an indoor stadium. So that's something that you have to adjust to as well because the noise level is going to echo a lot inside of an indoor facility. Whereas if you play at the Big House or if you play at Iowa, it's all going up in the atmosphere and you can just hear it, but it goes away after a minute. Whereas now when you're at Lucas Oil, it's going to stay there until it deafens.
Right. And I mean, the noise factor, I think, for Michigan is not going to play a big role because the way Michigan Stadium is built and architecturally, it's built to keep the noise actually inside the stadium. So you could have the half capacity of that stadium and it still sounds like it's full. But the simple fact that it's probably going to be max 32 degrees outside, but it's going to be in the 70s and 80s inside that building.
Oh, easily.
So they can't even use the how do I put it? They can't say their practices at home are going to really help with the weather wise because unless if they have an indoor stadium to where they can adjust the temperature for practice, they're sitting outside 32, 37 degrees weather in the snow, cold, and blowing practicing for this game.
Yeah. I'm not sure about Iowa's facilities, but I'm pretty sure Michigan has an indoor facility that they can change and update it. So I almost want to think Michigan could have the upper hand here based on their facilities and their environment that they've played in before. But again, I don't know what Iowa has to offer as far as facility-wise, and who knows? Maybe they could have the same thing. They might be able to have an indoor facility that they can practice in and adjust temperature and figure out different scenarios and make it an even playing field, which very well could be. This game could come down to whoever has the ball last.
Yep. So with that in mind, And honestly, Iowa, same thing. It's they didn't play Michigan, so all they have on Michigan is their any game tapes that were sent to them or they were able to find online or any of that to study. So it's going to be an even playing field between both of them, not actually playing each other in the regular season.
Exactly.
So with that in mind, from my understanding, there's been a few head coaches or just in general coaches changing through the NCAA.
Over the last 36 hours, two head coaches have left their respective programs while they were still in season to go to new programs that needed a head coach. LSU didn't take very long to hire their new head coach. They waited maybe 24 to 48 hours before they brought in Brian Kelly from Notre Dame. How they managed to do that, I have no idea. A few weeks ago, Brian Kelly said in a news conference, the fairy godmother would have to offer me $250 million for me to leave Notre Dame. Well, fairy godmother didn't exactly do that, but she LSU did offer him a nice contract. His annual salary will amount to 9.5 mil a year, which will rank as one of the largest coaching contracts that will be this offseason. But he has signed a 10-year, $95 million contract plus incentives.
Damn.
That estimates if Brian Kelly will make 9.5 million a year at LSU for 10 years, he will be making between 1 to 2.5 million dollars more than he made at Notre Dame in his tenure there.
Jeez.
He was getting paid approximately 7 to 8 million a year, but those are not exact figures that they have provided. This is all estimating numbers.
Right. And didn't he?
Lincoln Riley, on the other hand, from OU, his contract is pages and pages of just incentives. At Lincoln Riley's USC contract details, $100 million for doesn't say how many years he signed, but USC is buying both of his homes in Norman, Oklahoma for $500,000 over his asking price. They are buying him a $6 million home in Los Angeles, and he gets to use the team's private jet 24/7 for anything he needs.
Jeez, that makes family vacations easy.
It really does. So you have unlimited use of the team's private jet. You get basically a free house. You get $1 million bonus for USC buying both your old houses in Norman, and you're gonna make $110 million while you're there.
Jesus, I'd just take a fourth of that. And speaking of money, again, Michigan being in the headlines. Did you hear what Jim Harbaugh is doing?
Jim Harbaugh is probably one of the most respected coaches in college football right now because of after Saturday's win versus Ohio State, his incentives that were given to him at the beginning of this year are now starting to take effect. His contract has the ability to earn up to $3.475 million for contingency A, winning the Big Ten championship, and B, getting into the college football playoff, and then C, for winning the national championship.
Plus,
that includes
the $500,000 for winning the Big Ten East outright.
Exactly. The $500,000 for winning the Big Ten East, just in general, was huge.
Which is funny because we're talking these numbers and all that, and what a lot of people don't realize is he ain't gonna see a dime of it because he's decided to turn around and donate it back to the athletic department for any coaches or staffing for the athletic department that took pay cuts or went on leave due to COVID to make sure that their families and everything were taken care of.
And that's exactly right. The Michigan Athletic Department implemented salary reductions 5 to 10% for most of its employees in 2020 to help offset the revenue loss from the pandemic and salary freezes. So everything that Jim Harbaugh is going to make for an added bonus from here on out after the Ohio State game is going back to every single athletic department faculty member that has been affected from COVID-19. That tells you what type of person Jim Harbaugh is and how much he loves and cares for this university. Giving back to his athletic department that he's an alumni from to help pay the way for everybody that's in need in that department.
Well, yeah, that's just amazing on his part that he went to school there. He was a student athlete there, graduated from U of M, ended up going to do a few college teams as a head coach, went from there to the NFL to the 49ers, left the 49ers to come back to U of M, and this is what he's doing for the college that started his career off right. So, with that in mind, let's see here. What do we got on today's agenda? Jacksonville State hires Rich Rodriguez. So what do we know about that, Justin?
Former Michigan coach Rich Rodriguez was previously the UL Monroe offensive coordinator, but will now go to Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State earlier this month accepted an invitation to join Conference USA and compete in the FBS beginning in 2023.
Nice.
So Rich Rodriguez will now go back into FBS coaching starting in the year 2023, where he was previously in an FCS program with UL Monroe. Good for Rich Rodriguez getting back into the FBS. Great to see former Michigan coaches getting recognized and getting back into their head coaching duties.
Well, exactly. And speaking of head coaches, Virginia Tech made a deal with Penn State's defensive coordinator to become their next head coach.
Yeah, a little bit of a shocking move, I would think. Penn State has a really good defense. Brent Pry, I know, loves that university and loves his team. Wasn't sure. Well, of course, now with the coaching carousel that it is now, anything's possible. So Brent Pry felt like it was time that he deserved a head coaching job, and the Hokies are willing to give him that opportunity.
Well, yeah, and hopefully it works out for him over there because, like you said, he's leaving Penn State, who has an awesome defense, and he was the defensive coordinator over there to become a head coach. So hopefully it works out for him and it doesn't backfire on him. And with all that in mind, the NCAA season, like I said at the beginning of the season, it's coming to an end. Which brings up Heisman's. Who's in, who's out, and from my understanding, there's a Heisman hopeful out there that has entered the transfer portal.
At the beginning of the season, Oklahoma's quarterback, he was the Heisman frontrunner, and after his bad game he got benched and was replaced by, I believe, Caleb Williams. After the end of the season, now that Lincoln Riley is gone, he's entered himself in the transfer portal. Now, will he follow Lincoln Riley to USC? That is unclear. He has not made any remarks as to where his interest could be. All I know is that his recruiting has been opened up fully. So any university that wishes to pursue may do so and speak with this Heisman hopeful.
Well, that's I guess bad for the team, but good for him. He wants out of there. He feels like he needs to go someplace else to be better. So if it works out, that's a smart move on him. Don't know if your ESPN app just went off, but mine did about the college football playoffs coming up here shortly in the next few weeks. And sitting here kind of skimming through it while we're talking, and I'm reading something very interesting in this article. And I quote, Alabama might also be missing if the Tide don't beat Georgia and win the SEC championship, which means this could be the first CFP without the previous national champion in the field. With that being said, I could honestly see Alabama not being at number 3 at the end of this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, in my personal opinion, I didn't think they should be 3 anyway to begin with. They had a huge scare against Auburn in the Iron Bowl, and it took 4 overtimes for you to win that game.
Well, exactly.
Alabama was down 10-3 with I think a minute 30 left to go in the game, and they come back to tie the game to force overtime.
Yep.
That's not a team that I think is a legitimate contender for a championship. That's a team that really didn't play a very good game. You're capable of playing a game like the way Georgia plays a game.
Well, exactly, and the way they played in the Iron Bowl, I mean, the past few games, yeah, they were winning their games, but they weren't really winning their games like they normally do. So something's going on over there at that Alabama camp because it's unusual for them to struggle in the trenches. They're usually steamrolling teams that are very below them, and they just had struggled against them. So I honestly I could see Georgia beating them this weekend and Alabama not winning the SEC, which is going to put their CFP potential at very much a big risk.
Yeah, and the scenarios, truthfully, if Georgia beats Alabama, and if Cincinnati wins their championship game, Oklahoma State wins their game this week, I very well could see that it could be Georgia number 1, Michigan number 2 if they win the Big Ten championship, Cincinnati at number 3, and you get Oklahoma State at number 4, leaving Notre Dame out.
Yeah.
Notre Dame's season is done.
Yeah.
Their only hope is that Georgia beats Alabama, Michigan loses to Iowa, and Cincinnati loses to whoever they're playing in the American Conference Championship.
Now, honestly, I even with Michigan losing the Big Ten championship, I could see them only dropping 2 spots though.
I could see Michigan still in the top 4, but I don't see Cincinnati or Alabama in the top 4, which would make me believe that Oklahoma State and Notre Dame would be the 2 that would replace them.
Well, exactly. But I could see Cincinnati winning this weekend, so that's going to keep them in there. And I don't see Alabama winning this weekend. Georgia turned out to be a very tough team this season, so I honestly, if I had to look at it, I'm gonna probably say it's going to be Georgia, Michigan, someplace in there, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma State. We're gonna literally have a top 4 where one of the teams out of the top 4 only has had 1 appearance in the playoffs, and the rest haven't.
And if that's the case, in that scenario, the best semifinal playoff pairings would be Georgia versus Michigan and Cincinnati versus Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have Michigan playing Oklahoma State or Cincinnati, yeah, that could be a good game, but I really don't think it could be that close. Same thing if you have Georgia playing Cincinnati or Oklahoma State.
Well, exactly.
And let's say any of those teams do win against each other, but Georgia still wins and is on the national championship. I really believe that Georgia almost has already clinched the national championship trophy because there is no flaw in their game.
Well, no.
I haven't seen one yet.
So, and we both would agree we'd like to see Michigan go to the national championship. We both agree that we'd like to see them win it, but it is going to be a hard-nosed fight, blood, sweat, tears to get there for them. They pretty much, like Cincinnati in this group, are the underdogs, no matter what.
Yeah. Everybody's an underdog if you're under Georgia right now.
Well, yeah, and even if Alabama stays in it, you're definitely it's going to be, you got to treat it like an Ohio State game, no matter what, because you walk in there thinking, oh, we got this, you've already lost.
Yeah.
They're going to have to go into that stadium, go into that game thinking, we're down 10, we need to figure a way to make a comeback. All right, so
more breaking news from college football. Redshirt freshman quarterback Jack Miller from Ohio State decides to enter the transfer portal after the blowout loss to Michigan. He does not want to be around a program that just got the blowout loss from their rival.
Yep.
I'm sorry to see this Karen go away. Not really.
Oh, who knows? Maybe he'll come to Michigan.
If he does that, I hope we beat Ohio for 4 years straight with Jack Miller at QB. That'll really show him that, well, lost a good one, guys.
Yep. Besides NCAA football, we also have NFL news coming out from Christian McCarthy. Ankle on IR for a second time this year, ends his season. It's gotta be a bad ankle injury for it to end his season.
Yeah, with it being the second one this year, it could be seriously bad, or it could just be one of those things where he's just gonna take the loss and try and recover, do rehab, and be strong for next year, where it could just be something minor, and he just wants to say, well, I really don't want to risk having a third ankle injury, so I'll just take the rehab and just get stronger with it.
Which would be smart on his part.
Oh, absolutely. Or, yeah, and to me, I think that would be the best case scenario is don't risk it any more than you already have, since you've already had 2 of them this year.
Well, yeah.
Rest, recover, make it stronger, and then come back for next year.
Yep. And the, how do I put it, workhorse of the Detroit Lions is not on the starting roster for this weekend. Running back DeAndre Swift is out with a shoulder sprain. The way he's been running that ball, I could see that happening from a mile away. He's been doing 90% of the running for that team. And he, at this point, he might as well rehab that shoulder and move on from there and maybe play another game in the season, or maybe like wait it out and go into the postseason and get ready for next season at this point.
Yeah. During the Thanksgiving game against the Bears, he went out and did not return. Still kind of hurt a little bit. During the Steelers game, it was the same shoulder that he injured again, even though he was able to finish the game. But when they played the Pittsburgh Steelers, he carried the ball 33 times.
Yep.
33 times in one game. You don't see that anywhere.
No. I think the recent I've seen it was during the Michigan Ohio State game when fucking Michigan ran it, and 5 touchdowns later, their running back has them all.
Yeah. And with Swift can't go this week, Lions will look to Jamal Williams as the primary back.
Which
He started 8 games.
Yep.
And he's averaging a solid 4.2 yards a carry, but he's not the power back that DeAndre is.
No.
But he's very promising.
Well, yes. He's definitely probably the future of Detroit's running game as long as he stays healthy.
So. Yeah, and with Swift being out, he has 55 catches, and that's first among NFL running backs.
Yeah.
The only Lions player that has more is tight end T.J. Hawkinson.
Yep, and this year T.J. Hawkinson has not been producing like he should be neither.
He has not. I've been a little disappointed in his game because they should target him more than they really should.
Yep. So, looks like that's all we have in the way of football talk this evening. Major League Baseball. Max Scherzer signs with the Mets for, if I remember right around $130 million contract.
Yeah, getting Max Scherzer from the Los Angeles Dodgers wasn't gonna be an easy task for the New York Mets. They needed to fork over some serious cash for this Cy Young pitcher. And how they did it, I have no idea. But they were able to meet Max's offer, and they forked over $130 million for a 3-year deal.
Jeez. Shoot, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, if this ever gets towards any MLB team, I have no problem being in the bullpen for like a third of that. Just catching
right?
pitches. So
Max will be averaging $43.3 million a year.
Yeah. I'd take a third of that a year. Just to warm up their pitchers during games.
That and the other contracts that they have guaranteed money for their free agent signings has now given the Mets the highest payroll in the major leagues.
I'd like to know where they're getting all this money.
Especially since they have not led the payroll since 1989.
Yeah.
And they did it for $21.3 million.
Well, they definitely broke that.
Think about that. In 1989, breaking the major league payroll for a team was $21.3 million.
Yep.
Now it's $254.5 million.
Yeah. That tells you how much players and their what they're valued at has gone up in the years.
And truthfully, it's because of pitching. Cy Young Award winners, they're not cheap. You got to fork over to get their arm. They value they're valuable.
Well, they also know what they're worth too. So.
Well, and Max Scherzer's deal is almost nothing compared to what Corey Seager just got coming from the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Corey Seager just signed with the Texas Rangers for a 10-year, $325 million contract.
Jeez.
as their starting shortstop.
Yeah, like I said, I'll take a third of any of that just to sit in a bullpen and catch a ball that's being thrown at me. And then out of Tigers camp, they signed a pitcher from Boston? I'm
not sure. I haven't heard about the pitcher, but I will say that The Detroit Tigers signed a multi-year deal with free agent shortstop Javi Baez. Ex-Cub Javier Baez, who was originally with the New York Mets, has signed a deal with the Detroit Tigers for 6 years for an opt-out of his 7th year. He has agreed to $140 million. And that is the second largest free agent deal in Tigers franchise history, with Prince Fielder being the first largest free agent deal, with coming in at 9 years, $214 million when they signed him in 2012.
So here it is. Oh, darn it. Here it is right here. Tigers signed left-hander Aduro Rodriguez to 5-year, $77 million contract on Monday, a source with knowledge of the situation told the Free Press. He can make...
just like the New York Mets, the Detroit Tigers are having money to spend too.
Well, yeah.
That's
will
great.
Make up to $3 million in performance bonuses. Which, if I remember right, the reason why Detroit was able to sign Yvette Bez was Bez openly admitted he will go to Detroit just because they signed that pitcher.
Wow.
So, there's that out there, too. They got a very good shortstop because of their signing of Boston's pitcher.
That tells you right there that players will go where other players are as well.
Yep.
It's not always about the money. It's about the players.
Well, it's about who they surround themselves with when they're out on the field.
And right now, you just signed another character of baseball. On top of Miguel Cabrera being personable and having such a good character with the fans, you just now signed Javi Baez, who, in my opinion, is third on that list.
Oh, yeah.
The only other person that would rank above them would be Freddie Freeman.
Yep. I would totally agree with that. I believe with what's happening in Tigers camp, it's going to be a very good season coming up when spring hits. Spring training is going to be great. The start of the season's going to be great. I think there's going to be big things to come out of Detroit when it comes to baseball season coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. And they got a lot of talent coming up from AA and AAA.
Yep.
And if I remember right, 40-man roster was just updated recently. I believe son of Roger Clemens, who has been in the Detroit Tigers organization since he was drafted, Cody Clemens, was just recently given a phone call saying he was activated to the 40-man roster. So if my sources are correct, he will join spring training down in Lakeland.
Nice.
The 25-year-old Clemens hit .247 with 18 homers and 59 RBIs in 97 games for the Toledo Mud Hens, his first year in AAA. And outside of the batting average, 18 homers and 59 RBIs in 97 games? That's pretty damn good.
Yeah. So, with all the MLB news, MLB is proposing, or has put a proposal out for a new playoff.
Yes, they have a collective bargaining session between the MLB and MLBPA, Players Association. They have again proposed an expanded 14-team postseason format, which is how this would work. This is how this is projected to work. 7 teams from each league would make the postseason. The teams with the best record in each league would get wild card round buys. So they would get the buys.
Right.
The 2 division winners and top wild card teams will host games of 3 series in a wild card round. So they will be the host of all 3 games during the wild card series. The 2 other division winners get to pick their wild card round opponents from 3 other wild card teams. And then the 3 series winners and team the bye will advance to the divisional round.
Okay.
Now, how the 14 team format would have looked like last year, it would have in the American League, it would have been Tampa Bay would have had the bye. Wild card 1 would have been the Astros versus the Mariners. Wild card round 2 would have been the White Sox versus the Blue Jays. And wild card games number 3 would be the Red Sox versus the Yankees. And those would actually be really good matchups. The Astros were 95 and 67. The Mariners were 90 and 72. The White Sox were 93 and 69. The Blue Jays were 91-71. Red Sox were 92 and 70, and the Yankees were also 92 and 70. So overall, those 3 wild card games were fairly even if you're going to compare records.
Yeah.
Now, if you go to the National League, that's a little bit of a different story. The Giants would have had the bye with 107 wins and 55 losses. In the first wild card round, you would have had the Milwaukee Brewers at 95 and 67 against the Philadelphia Phillies at 82 and 80.
Okay.
In the wild card round number 2, you'd have the Atlanta Braves at 88 and 73 versus the Cincinnati Reds at 83 and 79. And now in the wild card 3 round, you'd have the Dodgers at 106 and 56 versus the St. Louis Cardinals at 90 and 72. If you look at the wild card 1 and wild card 3 matchup, it really isn't much of the contest if you compare records wise, because the Brewers have 13 more wins than the Phillies and the Dodgers have almost 20 more wins than the Cardinals.
Yeah.
But when you're in postseason, records go out the window, so
Yeah.
it could be close games. And especially when you compare the Braves and the Reds, those records are fairly about even, just as the White Sox and Blue Jays were over in the American League.
Yeah.
So if they do go to this 14-team format, I do think that it very well could benefit them, and they would they'd bring in more revenue for Major League Baseball. But on top of that, you get more October baseball for people to watch when they get home from work.
Well, yeah, exactly.
And you get Fox to broadcast all those, you got 6 matchups in a whole week. And if you get a doubleheader, let's say you get the Astros and Mariners, and then you get the Dodgers and Cardinals, you'll get Houston that plays at 7, you'll get the Dodgers that play at 10, broadcast those on the same day back to back, your ratings are going to go through the roof.
Well, exactly.
I think that could very well benefit Major League Baseball, and it should, I think, be the playoff format. Now, do the players want that? I don't know.
I honestly think they would agree with this, because it's giving more teams a chance to get into the playoffs at the end of the season, and it's going to be better for the sport anyways.
My only question is, how many times are you going to update the 40-man roster? Are you going to give them a couple more spots? Because if you're going to expand this playoff format, you're going to need a couple extra pitchers over in your bullpen to get you through the whole entire World Series. You can't rely on your starting 5 and then your key go-to 3-4 guys in the bullpen. Their arms are going to be shot.
Well, I honestly think what should happen at that point is they should, when it comes to the playoffs, should be allowed, 5 to 10 more players onto the roster. So instead of a 40-man roster, they go to a 50-man roster to prevent injuries.
And I agree with that statement. Especially because of COVID season. You got guys that develop symptoms. Throw them in you put them in the quarantine and call up your guys that have been on the as the NHL would call it, the taxi squad.
Yeah.
Put them on reserve.
Yep. So, yeah, I definitely I would love to see this. I mean, just like the college football playoffs, they're talking about expanding it to, was it 6 or 12 team playoffs? It's just going to benefit the sport and make teams work even harder to try and get into one of those spots so they can have a chance at the big time title of their sport. So,
Oh, absolutely. You expand college football to a 8-team playoff format, or even more than that. You're giving more teams an opportunity to play. You're putting only 1 or 2 more additional weeks onto the schedule because they're going to play an additional game and everything gets smaller when it goes down the bracket. But you got more teams that want to compete. And if you get teams like, for example, this year, Notre Dame and Oklahoma State, let's say the top 4 teams win out and they miss their opportunity. It's going to be sad for them,
yep.
but again, what was Brian Kelly trying to do at Notre Dame? Win a national championship. Unfortunately, because Notre Dame still has a stick up their butt and they don't want to join a conference, that'll never happen. Because in order to get into the college football playoff, usually you have to have an A, good record, B, be in a conference, and C, be in a conference championship game.
Well, yeah, and they also take into fact that how your how hard your schedule is. Like, who did you play through your season?
And you could schedule 3 games against Georgia, 3 games against Alabama, 2 against LSU, 2 games against Ohio. You could schedule multiple games against these tough top Power 5 opponents. But the problem is your season's done after 12 games.
Yep.
You're hoping that other teams are losing games, which you shouldn't have to hope for that. You should just be thankful if it actually does happen. But again, Notre Dame football is really one of the only sports that isn't in a conference. You got I'm almost positive the basketball's in the ACC. Their hockey team's in the Big Ten, and I think every other sport's in the ACC.
Yep.
I think football's the only one that's not in a conference, and I really don't understand why Notre Dame doesn't want to make a deal.
Who knows? It's one of those things that we'd probably cause ourselves to get a headache before we even figure it out, if we'd ever figure it out, and we probably don't want to know.
Well, and with college football changing so much, look what's happening. The SEC is bringing in 2 teams. The Pac-12 is thinking about bringing in some teams. You have the league that Texas is in.
Okay.
You got that league that's literally folding as we speak because all the teams that are in that league is going over to the SEC and the Pac-12.
Yeah.
They're all going. They're going away. Big 12. The Big 12 is literally going to fold because Oklahoma's leaving. Texas, I think, is going to the SEC. I think those reports have not been confirmed. But again, I think there's 4 teams out of that conference that are leaving that conference in a matter of 2 years to go play in the SEC and the Pac-12 over on the West Coast.
Well, yeah.
And then you've got the MAC here that wants to add some teams from Kentucky and Tennessee. And then you have the American Conference that wants to add a couple teams to make their season more competitive, which, again, I think is great if you're Cincinnati and all the other teams that want to be a playoff contender. If you're Cincinnati right now, you're thinking, okay, who can we bring in? Who's going to be a tough opponent that we can put on our schedule that's going to give us and the College Football Playoff Committee a good reason to put us where we belong?
Right.
All these different changes are happening in college football that it you can't follow along with it because it's everything changes every 5 minutes, and we just have to wait until the next season to actually figure it all out because that's when the schedules will be out and see who's going to who. And
So, lastly, but surely, I threw this in last minute, but fantasy football. A lot of people don't realize that me and you are part of one of my friends' fantasy football leagues, and apparently one of us don't know what the fuck we're doing. The other one of us has an idea. As I'm looking at the league standings right now, and apparently you're in third place and I'm in fifth. You're in playoff contention. I'm not.
I think that's a little bit of me kind of just going with the flow, seeing how my auto draft would do, and then just playing it out through the season with. And this is only my second year playing fantasy football. I really don't know how much about it. Whereas my other fantasy league, I could go all day and on about it. But it just
And on top of it, who do I play this week? You.
you and me are playing each other, and what the projections are, in my opinion, even though the number doesn't say it, I think it would be about pretty even based on who my players have in a matchup.
Well, yeah.
I may have guys that are projected to do well, but looking at my lineup, I've got two guys that are questionable and two guys that have really tough games. So
Right.
my number projection, I'm minusing myself 30 points.
That's
And
just
that
it. I'm not as much as I don't want to put my backup quarterback in because he's playing San Francisco, but my starting quarterback just lost last week to some shit ass team. So it's definitely going to be interesting. I've noticed there's been a few games I've won against guys that I shouldn't have beat, and then there's teams I should have beat and lost to this season. So it's definitely going to be interesting coming down towards the end of the season with what 2 weeks left in the season, roughly.
Is that all it is? 2 weeks left?
2 weeks in our regular season, I think. Let me see here.
If that's all that's left in the regular season, this season flew by.
Not including this week. After week 13, we have 2 weeks, and then we're into our playoffs for fantasy football.
Man, where did that time go?
And I literally need. Let's see here. I need Sanchez to lose this week, and I need to win this week to even have a chance because I would have to win out. I literally have to win out to make the playoffs and have the Sanchez squad lose the last 2 games. So, do I even play him? I don't. So, yeah. You're in playoffs, pretty much locked in for the playoffs this week, or for this season, and then it's up between me and the Sanchez squad on who's going to be that 4 seed at this point. So,
in my lineup, I'm just seeing who I can play because after about week 10 or week 10 and 11, I was scraping the bottom of the barrel trying to find guys I could play because I had so many injuries and guys that are questionable, and it's been tough. But I mean, somehow my guys have found a way, and I've been shocked and surprised. I'm like, well, good for me.
well, exactly. And I have a full roster too. I mean, I'm waiting for it to be approved by our administration, but I'm waiting on my waiver trade to be approved and everything. So it's coming down to the wire at this point. But I have even people sitting in reserve at this point to try to pull something off, but it's going to be difficult. So, but speaking of fantasy football, we've talked about it and we've talked about it. We haven't talked about it on our podcast, but we might as well now. Next season, we're kind of talking about bringing on a um, fantasy football league, at least for Sports Bros, and bringing in our viewers on a fantasy football league with the possible chance of some kind of championship prize at the end of it. So we'll give more details when that comes out. We're definitely going to probably meet rather in person or through phone calls on how that's going to work out between me and Justin, but that's definitely going to roll out for next season. So be on the lookouts for that.
Yeah, I'm excited to bring some of our listeners in on a fantasy football league and compete for a championship item. Again, won't really reveal a whole lot of details because we haven't decided what we want to do, but there's been a few ideas passed around between the two of us, and we think it's going to be a pretty sweet prize.
Well,
You
yeah.
and him and I have watched and listened to other podcasts and shows, and have seen some of the fantasy football trophies and prizes that they give out for their leagues, and it got us starting to thinking that, hey, maybe we should do that, and that's what our plan is to do. So
Yeah.
all you listeners out there that play fantasy football, hop on in. We'll start recruiting.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And it's definitely going to be something to have fun with because that's what the podcast is about, sports. So it'll give us something to do with our viewers, and it'll give us something to give back to our community at the same time. So we're definitely excited to roll this out once it gets closer. We'll give hints out and everything when it does get closer. We'll keep updates. If you don't join our Discord, at some point I will get a link so that I can send it out to everyone that is watching or listening so they can join in on the fun when this rolls out. But yeah, definitely um, be on the lookout for this because it's definitely going to be fun. A lot of shit talking. I'll say right now, we're all adults here. I'm not going to get pissed if there's shit talking going on and there's a little language in our sports. So, happens in the actual sport, it can happen in fantasy sports.
That's exactly right.
So
We both know it because we played in it.
well, exactly. I've had some very heated conversations when I was in the sport, and I've had some very heated conversations in drag racing. So it's definitely there. You can't get around it. You won't get around it. But with that being said, this is the end of our show. We are definitely back. We're hoping to get back to a normal routine as life in our state winds down because it's that time of the season where our major sports are no longer being played. So we are hoping to probably be live hopefully once a week. So make sure to follow us, subscribe to us, find us on Discord. If you need the link, you can go ahead and message us here on YouTube. I'll gladly send you the link to the Discord. Other than that, you all have a wonderful evening, wonderful day, and like always, have a break and have a sport.